Hi YouTube, Darth here. This is Yes or No, a weapon review series where I give a clear and concise answer as to what weapons you should be using in Battlefield. Today's weapon is the Ace-52 CQB Carbine, which also happens to be one of the most popular weapons in Battlefield 4. One of the guns that launched with Battlefield 4, it's been subjected to multiple patches over the life of the game. So how does it stack up? Should you be using the Ace-52 CQB? Yes or no? Yes, but this is a recommendation with some catches. I find the Ace-52 to be kind of a frustrating weapon. You can go on some amazing streaks with it, or you can be stopped cold on the second enemy that appears. It's not the best at CQB, and it's certainly not great at long range, but it is generally pretty good in Battlefield 4's typical engagement ranges. Let's check out what makes the Ace-52 CQB worth recommending, and why you might want to pick it up for Battlefield 4. At 33 maximum damage, 19 minimum, the Ace-52 CQB gives you 4 bullets to kill well beyond the close quarters distance. That doesn't mean you'll land every shot at that distance, but you will certainly be a threat even beyond extreme close quarters. With a minimum time to kill of 280 milliseconds, the Ace-52 is slightly faster than average for all automatics. It's not the fastest, but it certainly has a lot of punching power, especially in close quarters. If you're able to pull off headshots reliably, the Ace-52 CQB is particularly scary since it's only going to take 2 bullets to drop your enemies in the optimal engagement range. The left-right recoil on the Ace-52 CQB is 0.3 left and 0.3 right. This balanced recoil makes this a nice weapon for both PC and console in delivering consistent fire patterns. Particularly if you're good at bursting your weapons and keeping the aim on target through the Ace-52's otherwise extreme upwards recoil. That's pretty much all the Ace-52 CQB has to offer, damage and predictable recoil. A lot of the other characteristics of the gun are pretty mediocre or are actually detractions. The reload times are not impressive at 2.3 seconds minimum, 3.4 seconds maximum. Even among the carbines, it's not always the fastest killer, but let's look at the handicaps that really affect this weapon. At an astonishing 0.56 degrees of upwards recoil per shot, the Ace-52 CQB wants you to shoot the moon. The first shot recoil multiplier of 1.95 means it's going to travel upwards quite quickly. You can usually land your first 2 shots, but the odds of landing the third decreases pretty dramatically, especially depending on your level of recoil and burst control. At 400 meters per second, the slow-traveling bullets of the Ace-52 CQB mean its range potential is pretty bad. This is well behind the curve for weapons in Battlefield 4, and only the Groza 1 carbine matches it in its own category. Really, only the PDWs fire bullets any slower. Combined with its general inaccuracy and long bursts, this pretty much relegates the Ace-52 to engagements under 25 meters, but that's not a problem as long as you plan for it. Possessing only 26 rounds with a full magazine and 1 in the chamber, the Ace-52 CQB offsets its close quarters potential by carrying 5 less rounds than your typical automatic. This isn't a huge detraction as it can generally kill using 20% fewer bullets. But if you find yourself out of ammo, you are suddenly incurring the wrath of a 3.4 second full reload time, which is pretty lethal in close quarters if you're being pressed. At only 650 rounds per minute, the Ace-52 CQB is very interesting. Unlike most slow-firing weapons, it doesn't have great accuracy beyond close quarters, and even then it's not very forgiving of missed shots. If you're not 100% sure of your own accuracy, you might want to give it a pass for this very reason, or alternatively pick up and start practicing headshots. Overall, the Ace-52 CQB is a powerful weapon with serious trade-offs that need to be considered. Let's see how it stacks up against the competition in the carbine field. For the most part, the accuracy of the Ace-52 combined with its raw firepower make it a pretty good choice out to about 25 meters. You can see though that this otherwise top-tier accuracy falls off the more you push out from close quarters, and beyond 15 meters it starts falling off pretty fast. I don't personally think it's quite as versatile as other carbines, but it certainly is king of delivering damage up front. There is a catch to prizing the upfront damage though, as when you're talking less than 15 meters, it's almost better to run with the shotgun instead. It's kinda hard to beat a time to kill that is basically flight time, which puts the Ace-52 CQB in roughly the same barrel of fun that the Bulldog is in. Great in CQB, outmatched by shotguns, and not accurate enough at range to be viable in every situation. But like the Bulldog, there is an interesting niche for the Ace-52 CQB that I'll go over when I talk tactics and attachments. Being one of the vanilla launch weapons of Battlefield 4, the unlock requirements for the Ace-52 CQB are pretty simple. You merely need to gain 37,000 score with the Carbine class of weapons to unlock the Ace-52. Since Carbines are an all-kit weapon, you can pretty much choose to do this with any class you want. My own personal preferences lean towards me equipping carbines on the support and engineer classes, or occasionally on the recon when running a point defense. Paired with the recon tugs on Alpha or Echo on lockers is a great way to run an aggressive recon. The Ace-52 really isn't full of a whole lot of surprises when it comes to recoil. Aside from its staggering upwards recoil, it is relatively predictable. It's 0.56 degrees up, 0.3 left, and 0.3 right, accompanied by a first shot recoil multiplier of 1.95. That means this weapon is pretty much just going to go straight up. Counteracting this recoil means pulling straight down. Though with a substantial spread per shot of 0.112 degrees per shot, the weapon is going to bloom pretty significantly per shot. Much beyond the first 2 or 3 shots, you're going to have an inaccurate weapon on your hands, especially at range. Now there are 2 ways you can go about controlling the Ace-52 CQB. First, the kill shots are generally going to be 2 headshots or 4 body shots. Your accuracy is front-loaded on this weapon, so you should be bursting in 2 to 4 rounds in your ideal ranges. This will give you a pretty predictable pattern in close to mid-range. So what if you want to try to achieve a long-range shot? Well, your best bet might be going for much more limited bursts, but these are going to be extremely difficult unless your target is dumb. The moment you land your first bullet or 2, chances are that they're going to dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge out of the way. So this isn't a bad opportunity for going single shot on the weapon or trying to microburst for some more initial accuracy. But you're going to be fighting the recoil and spread like crazy. Ultimately, the Ace-52 CQB is not great at range, and you'll want to keep that in mind. First and foremost, if you're thinking you're going to use the Ace-52 CQB on a map without a lot of close quarters, you probably want to adjust your thinking. The slow bullet velocity and rough accuracy at range means it's outclassed on many larger maps in Conquest. It's also not the fastest killer, as its damage is really only slightly above the average due to its rate of fire. No, I think my favorite role for the Ace-52 CQB is identical to the Bulldog. It's the CQB to mid-range ninja assassin weapon. You're not going to outdamage shotguns, but they can't be equipped with silencers, at least in Battlefield 4. So in an ideal situation, you're going to try to get yourself into that sweet spot of 10 to 20 meters. I find sticking to cover and running with smoke grenades to be particularly useful for executing on this idea. Trying to stand up fight against the enemy is not the specialty of the Ace-52 CQB, especially with its questionable recoil and smaller ammo capacity. No, you'd much rather be in a situation where you're flanking them by surprise and getting time to put in the headshots. And in general, getting surprised with the Ace-52 CQB is a situation you want to actively avoid. The weapon is slow and counts on accuracy to pull it out of bad situations. Getting caught without the initiative means you're probably not going to be delivering on your best accuracy. And something I noticed about the Ace-52 is just how distinct the gun is for players and how frequently they will seek your Dorito after you get your first kill shot. Something you might not have to worry about as much if you're playing hardcore. Let's talk attachments for the Ace-52 CQB. There's 2 ways I prefer to run the weapon, and I'll talk a little bit about both. As for the community at large, I cross-referenced BF4stats.com in conjunction with Battlelog to get a peek at the favorite attachments for the Ace-52 CQB. The top users in the community seem to prefer running the Ace-52 with an RDS, the target detector, a suppressor, and either the potato or the stubby grip. I think that, in general, that loadout would probably work for 90% of situations in which the Ace-52 would be good, so my own personal setup is not far off. For my optic, I ran with the Cobra red dot sight. I think that this slightly plays well to the high vertical recoil of the Ace-52 CQB by giving a hint of the upward lane of fire. This works for me on a subconscious level, but perhaps you prefer to run the Ace-52 CQB with something a bit less obstructing like the Coyote RDS. It's preference here, but keep in mind that longer range scopes really aren't going to be great with the engagement ranges of the Ace-52. For the accessory, I mostly ran with the laser sight for hipfire moments, but I don't consider the Ace-52 CQB a great weapon in a hipfire capacity. Mostly because of its slow rate of fire and emphasis on accuracy of shots. Unfortunately, the target detector isn't great either, because if you need help seeing enemies closer than 30 meters, you might want to adjust the digital vibrance of your machine. You could always try something outlandish like the magnifier, but I think the laser is going to provide the most utility of all your choices, even if its effect is limited in situational viability. For my barrel, I actually went with the suppressor. The suppressor reduces the Ace-52's slow muzzle velocity even more, bringing it down to 290 meters per second. In its ideal range, you're not going to feel this a whole lot, but it definitely eliminates your long-range play. I think this is a pretty straightforward trade-off given the up-close potential of the Ace-52 CQB. You definitely don't want enemies sneaking up on you with the low rate of fire, and the suppressor lets you deliver a lot of pain in close quarters without being detected. Paired with the barrel, my underbarrel attachments of choice are the stubby or potato grips. The spread increase per shot of the Ace-52 CQB is already pretty punishing, and the stubby and potato grips will reduce this by 20%. If you feel like you want to be more on the move, you could exchange these for the vertical or ergo grips, but you also toss out some of that aimed fire accuracy. With the somewhat high first shot recoil multiplier, you could even try to make an angled grip work, but I generally think stubby potato is first tier for the Ace-52, followed by vert and ergo. So RDS of your choice, paired with suppressor and stubby or potato, I feel is the way to go with the Ace-52 CQB. If you find that you aren't being pressed or you want to prize accuracy over stealth, then you can upgrade to the compensator. The compensator will reduce the left-right deviation of the gun to dial in that accuracy even more. You start talking about being able to more reliably land that third and fourth shot even out to 35 meters. This may be a route you wish to go after you've mastered the limitations of the Ace-52 CQB. Ultimately, the Ace-52 CQB is a gun with great power offset by some pretty pesky limitations. The slow rate of fire means you can't be surprised, and the slow bullet velocity means you aren't a huge threat at range. But the firepower of the weapon gives a premium to accurate fire when it does land. So the Ace-52 CQB is a yes, but with strings attached. If you need a carbine that is a little bit more versatile but not quite as fast killing, you should check out the SG553. A personal favorite of mine, the SG553 is fast firing, fast reloading, and has a lot of capability to resist enemy pressure. Like the Ace-52, its performance falls apart at range, but it's easily my favorite carbine for aggressive recon. If you want a bit more accuracy at range, while simultaneously providing close-in rate of fire, the Ace-21 CQB can prove to be quite valuable. It's got more than enough ammunition to deal with a lot of pressure and sticks pretty close to the Ace-52 in terms of killing potential. If you find your time with the Ace-52 to be unsatisfying, this would probably be my next recommendation. That's it for this episode of Yes or No. If there's something you think I missed, or if you have a particularly different take on the Ace-52 CQB, please let me know in the comments below. If you've got a weapon you'd like me to review for Battlefield, also leave a comment. If you like what you saw, be sure to force choke that like button. And if you're new here, check out my channel and consider sticking around with a subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time, YouTube.